At first glance, the FN 509 to me reminded me a lot of a SIG P320. If you do the comparison between the 320 and the 509, you're going to see a lot of similarities in size. The slide height is almost the same, with surprisingly enough, the FN 509 being a little bit higher by about, 0.2 inches. So like 2/10 of an inch is not much. And of course, the weight is basically negligible as well, where they're both coming in around, 26-ish ounces, the FN weighing a little bit heavier, but not by a whole lot. So for me, when I was looking at this handgun, I didn't really know what was it about it that a lot of people liked. I've never been a fan of the F&N series. And when I saw it, I still was like, it's okay. It's nothing great. It was a solid offering, but at the same time, it didn't really do much for me. Then of course, when I was at the gun shop and I was taking a look at it and I said, well, is this gun that good? And then I wound up dry firing a couple times and I just wasn't a fan of the trigger. The texturing was different and yet at the same time was interesting. But again, it didn't really strike me as a winning type of combination for what I was looking for at the time. Now, in regards to some of the features of the gun that I do like, the sights kind of are cool. They're slightly thinner than most sights that would come with a standard gun. And I do like that because what I did notice as I was bringing this gun up to my eye level, I did notice that it was a very, very natural aim point for this handgun. And I do like those sights because it does minimize what you're actually looking at. Sometimes if you get wider sights, sometimes you'll be concentrating a lot on what's on the sides as opposed to what's right down the middle. And I found that these eliminate that quite a bit. So, overall, the FN 509 for me wasn't necessarily a gun that I had on my radar per se. But now that I actually got one in, I have to say there were some things that I picked up on it that I didn't think were necessarily obvious at first. So let's go to the table and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, guys, so we're back at the table. And, as I said before, this gun reminds me a lot of a SIG P320. But now that I actually have it and I've been playing around with it for a couple of days, surprisingly enough, I'm going to say it actually reminds me of a different gun that I actually like a lot better than the P320. Now, first off, let's take a look at some of the really good features about this. And we'll talk about the one negative thing that I found about this handgun. So first off, positives. Look, every striker-fired handgun that's on the market right now is a good option. There aren't any loser guns. And I say that because there are so many good options, whether you're on a budget, whether you can afford a really expensive handgun. There's just a lot of great choices. So don't be afraid to go out there and get a gun just because it doesn't say F&N or Glock or CZ or SIG or whatever. There's just so many great choices. And the FN 509 is one of those great choices. And I'm very surprised that I'm saying this because initially, again, I didn't have a lot of faith that I wanted this gun to begin with. One of the things that I like about this right out of the box is just the look of the gun. And that was something that I mentioned actually when I was taking photographs of this, that this was one of the best guns that I've ever photographed. Now, I know that sounds kind of weird coming from a gun channel, coming from a guy who shoots his guns, but at the same time, if you spend time taking pictures of your guns and posting them online, what you're going to realize is that some guns just look really good. And this is one of them. Every picture I took with this gun just came out really nice. And from the sheen on the slide to the coloring of the FDE, just about everything was just really, really, I guess you could say photogenic. It's kind of like the Miss Universe contest here. But this gun has a lot of things going for it that initially I would not have detected if I wasn't taking those photographs. First off, let's start off with the pros. The pros are abundant in this particular handgun. So first off, you're looking at a fully ambi gun. Now, you guys know that this was one of the guns that was entered into the Army contract or the military service contract that, eventually the United States Army went with Sig Sauer. Obviously, Glock was involved, Beretta, FN, you name it. And this was their entry, or at least like a lot of it that you see here was a part of that. Now, in regards to the features, one thing that stands out is, again, you have full ambi controls with the exception of your takedown. Now, obviously, you have your slide lock, slide release, you've got your mag release, and if you just turn it over, you have the same features here. So the gun is ambidextrous right out of the box. Now, again, what I've tested before on some of the other guns is to see if the function of them actually work. So this is for you righties. Very easy to activate that slide, which is very nice. And then for you lefties, what I did notice is that you can't just sweep. You actually have to take the pad of your thumb and really just hold it down and then and then it goes down. But it doesn't take much effort or much force to do that, which is very good. Comparatively speaking to, let's say, the P10 or the Smith & Wesson M&Ps that I have, this one absolutely is better than both of those in regards to the ambi controls. Mag release for you righties, boom, comes right out, no issues, no stick or anything like that. And then for you lefties, again, same thing, very easy to actuate it, no problems at all. Now, in regards to the sight picture, again, the sights are actually kind of cool. You'll notice that the sides of the rear sights do not extend very far out. It's a very tight-fitting sight. And some people may not like that, but I actually like that because one of the things I did notice is that this gun is very easy to aim just when you're bringing it up to your eye level. Now, again, I haven't shot it, so I can't wait to get it to the range to see what it does. But overall, it's a very, very good sight picture. Excellent, to be honest with you. The front sight and the rear sight are slightly raised or elevated. Obviously, they're not going to be suppressor height sights, but they're fairly tall compared to some of the other sights that I own on a lot of my other handguns. So I actually like that. It's actually pretty good. Again, you have kind of a, I don't want to say a matte, but definitely not a high glossy finish to it. So it's kind of in between, but it's got a nice look to it. And I have to say, it really does stand out in regards to just the aesthetics of the slide. Again, you have this line right here that's a little bit duller in finish than everywhere else. So you don't really get any reflection there. It's not serrated or it doesn't have lines on it. So, you know, whether or not that will actually, you know, reflect the light or not, that is yet to be seen. Again, all the controls are fairly easy to manipulate and to reach. I don't have any problem reaching these controls, whether it's the mag releases or the slide release, slide lock. Takedown is, again, very, very basic. You lock the gun back in place. You have your lever here. You just lower your lever, whoops, like that. And then you have to just release your slide, pull the trigger, and then it comes right off your gun. Again, you have your captive recoil spring there with a steel guide rod. You've got your barrel. That is a crown barrel, so it's kind of nice. It's got a nice little look at it when it's extended out that way. But again, nothing that would say it's, you know, somehow different from any other striker-fired handgun. Now, in regards to the slide, and again, you hear my dog in the background because I've got people over, so it's always great when you're trying to film a video and you got a dog going crazy. Now, in regards to putting this gun back together, one of the things I have noticed about it is that it doesn't want to go back very easily, and I think it has something to do with the guide rod kind of slipping out of place a little bit. So that's one thing that I've noticed, and I've had to adjust that a couple of times, and once I adjust it, it goes right back into place. No real issues. Now, let's talk about something that may or may not be a controversy for some people, and that is going to be the grip texturing on this particular handgun. So when you look at this grip, the first thing you're going to notice is it's got several different grip textures on it. On the side panels, it kind of has more of a small, close together, bumpy pattern on it. I don't even know what you want to call that, with the FN logo on there as well. On the front, it's almost like a fish scale, would be a good way. It's not super pronounced off of the lower. And then on the rear, you can see that it is much more pronounced than the front. So, I mean, overall, you're getting different textures just on the lower portion of this grip that I think meets the qualifications for anybody who's got wet hands, bloody hands, buttered hands. I don't really know, but it would be very difficult, I think, for you to lose traction on this grip. Again, in the upper area here, you also have another texture, which is more or less like a sandpaper texture. And it's very light. It reminds me a lot of the Smith & Wesson 2.0, just not as aggressive. And again, that's really just there for your thumbs. So, I mean, other than that, once you get your hand on this handgun, it's just a really nice, firm grip. It really locks down really well. So very, very impressed with that so far. Now, in regards to the one negative about this handgun, it's definitely the trigger for me. Now, some people say the trigger's not that bad out of the box, and I would agree. It's definitely not that bad. It's actually a pretty standard trigger. It pulls anywhere from 5.5 to 6 pounds. Let me see if I can find my gauge. I think I lost it earlier. Let me see, right there. And then just lost something else. But I'm going to see what this comes in at. I haven't pulled the gauge on this yet, so I'll do this for the first time right now. So let's see what I come up with. And it won't break because of the stupid, there we go. So I've got 6 pounds, 6.7 ounces on the first trigger pull. And again, it's kind of difficult to do that just because of that hinge, which is what I'm going to talk about next. So I'll do it a second time. 5 pounds, 15.8 ounces. And I usually don't do it twice, so we'll see what the average is. So about 6 pounds, 3.2 ounces. So about a 6 pound trigger, give or take. Now, Some people say this trigger isn't that bad. Guys, I can't really tell you yes or no about that. And it's really about personal preference. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of these hinge triggers. I don't understand why manufacturers are making triggers that look like that or feel like that in your hand. The one thing I noticed about this trigger is that if, let's say, for example, you go and wrap your finger in and you hit it high, I've already felt a few times that this little place where this hinge is right there is actually biting down on the pad of my finger. I definitely do not like the way that feels. Now, if you go a little bit lower, you avoid that. But at the same time, you really shouldn't have to worry about necessarily putting it on a specific spot on your trigger to make sure your finger doesn't get pinched. But that's just something that I noticed about this particular handgun and this particular hinge. Now, is this anywhere near an M&P? It's fairly close. This is a little bit thicker. It's a little bit wider surface area wise, but it is pretty much similar to an M&P without that major hook. Obviously, the hook trigger on the M&P has been, I think, their linchpin for a long time, but obviously Apex has changed that. Now, of course, this gun I wasn't actually even going to consider until Apex announced they were going to be releasing the trigger for this, which I already have, which I eventually will put in, but I do want to shoot this with the standard trigger first before I do that. So for me, the biggest negative of this handgun is right off the bat, the trigger. Now, in regards to the trigger pull, I have to be honest with you, it's not that bad. You have a very short take up, and really, guys, there's not much else happening after that. There's a little bit of smush, but not by much. And then, of course, you hit that wall, and then it breaks. You reset, which is kind of interesting because it looks like it pushes forward there, and then just a little bit more. So it's almost like a hesitation. It feels like it gets locked up on something inside. Not exactly sure what that is. It could just be that it needs some oil or something. Again, I just got this the other day, but I will tell you the reset is very positive. I think almost a little bit too positive. It reminds me a little bit more of that forceful push on a PPQ than anything else. Again, I'm hopeful that the Apex trigger will fix that, but I'll wait and see what happens with that. Now, in regards to maybe one other minor negative about this gun, it's actually the ambidextrous mag release. Now, some people think that's a great feature. I'm not exactly sure that I want one of those, and I'm going to explain why. So as I grip this gun, okay, I tend to really grip my guns very high. And you'll notice that you can see right there, this finger here is covering almost that entire mag release. So what happens is if I go to switch magazines, I can still pop that mag, but I can feel the actual side of this mag release here busting into my finger. And my concern would be if I'm doing a quick mag change, really quick, am I going to be able to get my fingers out of the way fast enough in order to drop that mag effectively? My other concern would be as I'm gripping this gun, and the tighter I grip that gun, would I eventually potentially drop the mag release drop that mag by hitting the mag release on the ambidextrous side? That's something I don't know yet. Again, like I said, I have to shoot it first, and I'll let you know once I've done that. But that's just something I'm noticing that may be a negative. Not sure yet, but again, time will tell. Overall, this gun was a very surprising handgun in regards to the way it felt in my hand. Now, again, initially I thought it reminded me of the SIG P320, and really just talking about dimension-wise, it is very similar to it dimension-wise. However, I'm happy to say that what F&N did to make this gun even better than a SIG P320 was that it made it actually feel in your hand like an M&P 2.0. And what I mean by that is I was comparing this earlier to my M&P 2.0 compact. And I'm going to pull that out for you right now, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about in regards to what they did here. Now, whether they did this on purpose or not, I couldn't tell you, but here's the M&P 2.0. There's the F&N 509. Now, you'll notice that the grip angle on both of these guns is almost identical. You have a little bit more of a hump here, but again, you can always switch that backstrap out to a smaller one if you chose to, and there is a different backstrap for this if you want to increase the size of that as well. But if I was to lay this right on top of here, and I'll try to center that in the camera for you guys, what you're going to notice is that this grip angle for both of these handguns is identical. I mean, there is absolutely no difference. There's a little bit more of a bump here, but not by much. And honestly, guys, the grip angle is the exact angle on both handguns. So that was a nice surprise. And one of the other things I noticed about both of these handguns is that they actually feel almost identical when you're holding them in your hand. I'm going to say that the F&N has a slight advantage over the M&P, even though I think the M&P is just such a fantastic handgun. One of the things that the people at F&N did was they actually made this so that your hand can go further underneath here. Now, I'm a huge fan of that. The Steyr does that. The P10 does that. And I really think that a lot of manufacturers should be looking into that ergonomic portion of the rear part of that pistol. because as you can see, the M&P, while it does fall quite a bit into my hand, the FN 509 sits a little bit further back, which means that should minimize recoil even more. And again, you'll notice that because they made this cutout and your hand goes pretty high in there, even though this sits up as high as a Sig Sauer slide, what you're going to notice is I grip this gun. You'll notice that that slide is riding pretty close to that thumb. And I like that. I like when the slide height and the bore axis is low like that, because what you're going to find is that it's just a more pleasant shooting handgun. With the SIG P320, I think the biggest problem they had was when they made the frame or the lower of the P320, that beaver tail came out low and far out, so you weren't able to sit high onto that handgun, whereas you can with this. And I think it has a slight advantage over this, only because the M&P has a little bit more polymer on the bottom here where this has been thinned out. So you're not able to get as high into this gun as you are in the FN 509. So that was just something that I wanted to show you guys, especially if you're a M&P 2.0 fan. This gun really does feel very similar to it and feels slightly better than it, which is a very big surprise to me. Overall, I honestly like this gun. I'm very surprised with all the features that I've seen. The design of it, the aesthetics of it are very, very nice. You know, the slide serrations come in and they're extremely functional for press checking. If you're into that, for, you know, basically running your slide, they're all very functional slide serrations. They're pretty wide apart. They're pretty deep cuts. And overall, they look really nice. You know, in my opinion, this was a gun that, even though I wasn't going to buy, I'm sure glad that I did. And this is a gun that, honestly, right now, just the way it looks, just the way it feels in my hand, and just the way it's been constructed, I think FN did a great job with this handgun. Can't wait to shoot it. And when I do, I'm definitely going to report back about that, and also eventually make that comparison between the stock trigger and the Apex trigger. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Do you like the FN 509? And if so, why or why not? I think it's going to be an interesting debate to see what you guys think about it. So again, I hope you enjoyed the video. Tell me what you think about the gun. And as always, guys, I hope you have a great night. Stay safe. And as always, freedom is never free.